Alright guys, in today's video we have more PlayStation news to go over and talk about. We have two main topics we're going to be discussing within this video, one of which I think will excite many of you, and the other I think will make those of you who have been supporting the PlayStation 5 for some time now feel pretty good. So if you could do me a favor before we dive into it and hit the like button to help this video out and show your support, I would really appreciate that. And I want you to let me know down in the comments below whether or not you like this direction that PlayStation as a whole is going in, that direction being them focusing on big AAA wide appealing titles, doubling and tripling down on this idea of creating the biggest and best games in the industry. Let me know whether you are for that or not. The reason why I'm asking is because we have a pretty significant update on one of Sony's first-party studios, that being London Studio. This is a studio that doesn't really get talked about too much, understandably so. They haven't really done anything major or very big in recent years. I think the last project they did was Blood and Truth for PlayStation VR, which was relatively successful, if I'm not mistaken. But it sounds like whatever they're doing next is going to be potentially the biggest thing that they've ever worked on. And I have a feeling that Sony's London studio is the next studio in line to get the Sony Bend treatment. I'm sure some of you know what I mean by that. And I'll go over what that means in a minute here. Let's go over the new information. So it says PlayStation's London studio has announced that it is appointing two new co-heads of the studio and also revealed some early details on their next game. The studio has appointed Tara Saunders and Stuart White as the co-studio heads, who will now lead the way for the studio in the future. But tucked away in this blog post, there are some details about London Studio's next project, which will likely release for PlayStation 5 and maybe PlayStation VR. Towards the end of the Q&A with both Tara and Stuart, Tara throws in this tidbit of information, and she says, "Our next project has huge potential, and we want to leverage that to the max by empowering the team to thrive and deliver a top quality game." Now, granted, that is not revealing too much information, but make no mistake, this is revealing something pretty significant. That being that it sounds very much like Sony greenlit a big AAA project for Sony London to take on. And this is why I said I believe they are getting the Sony Bend treatment. Sony Bend was a studio that early on in PlayStation's life, they did make some AAA games like Siphon Filter, and they worked on a game for the Vita. But after that, they just really weren't talked about that much. They weren't really considered a prominent studio underneath Sony. Then Sony said, look, we want you to fulfill your potential. We want you to maximize your potential, and we want to give you the budget for a AAA title. Make whatever you want. And so Sony Bend made their dream game, that being Days Gone, and I have no doubt that Days Gone 2 is currently in the works, and it's going to be even bigger, even better for PlayStation 5. And now Sony Bend is talked about as one of the, I don't want to say one of the top tier studios underneath Sony. I think they could achieve that with Days Gone 2, but they're certainly looked at with more prominence now, right? Like, they're looked at with more respect. They've proven that they have what it takes to deliver a high quality AAA game. And I think that with their next title, they'll be able to maybe even raise the bar even further and potentially be looked at even bigger. And I think that Sony London is now getting the opportunity to do that exact same thing here. Now, it is worth noting that they have worked with PlayStation VR, so whatever this game is, it could be a PlayStation 5 exclusive, it could be a PlayStation VR 2 title, it could be both, but whatever it is, it's going to be very big. There's been speculation that they're returning to The Getaway, which I think is certainly possible. That's a title that, you know, has been dormant for quite some time, or an IP, I should say, and it would make sense for them to kind of do a big AAA getaway title for the PlayStation 5. They could be returning to 8 Days, which is another AAA title that they were working on during the PS3 era, and it got canceled. Maybe they're returning to that, or maybe it's a completely new IP. But make no mistake, this is very clearly letting us know that this is a big project, as they say, that has huge potential, and they're saying that they want to deliver a top quality game. So this is how Sony is growing their studios. I've been talking about it for some time, and I like talking about it because this is what I want to see. This is the thing that gets me most excited about the future of PlayStation. Things have been going great already, but knowing that Sony is doubling and tripling down on their efforts to produce bigger AAA titles from all of their studios. You know, think about what Sony has done with Naughty Dog, with Guerrilla Games, with Sony Santa Monica, right? With, Sony Bend, with Sucker Punch. They have grown them to the point where they are now, especially looking at Sucker Punch, right? More recently, they were looked at as a big studio. You know, they were well respected for the infamous games, but there's no doubt that what they did with Ghost of Tsushima has just elevated their studio to another level of prestige and notoriety. And Sony wants to continue to do this for all of their studios that they feel have the potential to do so. And it seems like London Studio is next in line. So, yeah, I mean, it's anybody's guess what this game is. I can tell you it's probably a ways away. Like, we're probably not going to hear about this game for some time. And I have no doubt in my mind that when we do, it will be a full PlayStation 5 exclusive. Again, it could be a PlayStation VR 2 title. We don't know. But either way, it's going to be something really big. And I love when we hear about this because, again, these are just the types of games that draw me into PlayStation. It's the reason why I support PlayStation the way I do. I'm just a massive fan of the big AAA, big budget titles. They do them so well. And, I don't think Sony needs to go out there and just buy studios up left and right or buy a big company. They really don't need to do that. That's not what they do best. What Sony does best is they take these smaller teams, they grow them over time, and they maximize their potential. And we have clearly seen that. So, yeah, let me know what you think this game is that Sony's London studio could be working on. Let me know what you want it to be. But we're going to move on from that and talk about PlayStation 5 Performance. Now, I fully understand that this is a topic that's not really that relevant, especially right now, but there are still groups of people who still run around saying this and saying that. And I just want to let anybody who is maybe a PlayStation 5 owner, anybody who has maybe fell for some of the rhetoric that has been just kind of been spread around, honestly, since the launch of this console, I want to let you know that Digital Foundry did another comparison and they found some pretty interesting results. Now, before I let you know what these results are, do not take this as some type of attack on Xbox or the Xbox Series X or its fans, because it's really not that serious. In fact, the only thing you should take away from this is that the PlayStation 5 is a perfectly capable console. That's really the only reason I am letting you know this. It's not to slander Xbox or trash it or make it sound like there's anything wrong with it, because it's really not. I'm sure that this is a problem that will get fixed just like all the other problems. But again, this is just to kind of remind everybody that regardless of the rhetoric that's spread around about the PlayStation 5, its specifications, what it is or is not capable of, this is the reality that we are seeing in front of us and we cannot ignore it. Okay, so it says here the latest Digital Foundry analysis focuses on the recently released PS5 Performance update for Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. Their findings show that the PS5 performs significantly better than the Xbox Series X with fairly large frame rate drops. The PS5 version has no issues whatsoever, sticking to a consistent 60 FPS throughout Digital Foundry's testing. However, in one section of the track, and we do have to acknowledge it's one section of the track, it's not like it's the entire game, which lasts about 3 turns, the frame rate on the Xbox Series X takes a huge nosedive. This happens in any event that takes place on this section of the track, which is used a lot throughout the game. So it goes on to say here that the huge variation in frame rate can also be seen on the Xbox One X version of the game when compared to the PS4 Pro version. So the issue purely lies in how the game is run or put together on the Xbox systems. PS4 Pro does suffer some frame drops here and there, but the PS5 version runs completely fine, hitting 60 FPS perfectly. Digital Foundry does highlight that this issue is likely due to software rather than the hardware. The Xbox Series X does get auto HDR, however, whereas the PS5 does not have this feature. So again, like, there you go. Even at the end here, there is something that the Series X version offers that the PS5 version does not. However, I would argue that consistent performance is, I'd say, more important to the majority of people who game than something like auto HDR. But you know, it says here this is likely due to a software issue rather than hardware. And, you know, again, this is why I don't think it's a big deal. But for those who are wondering why I'm mentioning this, it's because we are yet again seeing the PS5 do perfectly fine. These consoles are kind of just going to trade blows back and forth, but I think the most important thing that anybody can take away from this, whether you're the biggest Xbox fanboy in the world, whether you're the biggest PlayStation fanboy in the world, is the fact that both of these consoles are doing just fine. I think the reason why I felt the need to highlight this is because more recently there's been just an excessive amount of talk and discussion about the PlayStation 5 and how it's not capable because of RDNA this and RDNA that, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, these are the results we've seen. And that's not to say that the Xbox hasn't had a couple of games here and there that have leveraged, you know, the hardware there more potentially, or where the PlayStation 5, like we saw with the Division, you know, I was quick to defend that because it was clearly on the developer side. So in this case, it's most likely and kind of obviously on the developer side as well. But this is the reality of what we've seen. The one thing I do want to highlight here is that this is something we have seen quite a bit for the Xbox Series X. And it's not just me as a PlayStation fan acknowledging this. I've seen many people acknowledge this as well, where it always seems like there's just some kind of hiccup with the Xbox Series X version of games, where there's just random areas where there's like a bug or a software issue or something that has to be patched that causes it to just have issues with frame rate. This is something we've been seeing consistently. Now, do I think it's serious? Do I think it's serious enough that, hey, if you're considering buying a Series X because you have no interest in a PS5, this should deter you from doing so? Absolutely not. This is not that serious. Again, this is to just highlight the fact of the matter, and that is that the PS5 is a perfectly capable machine that has held its own since the time it launched against the competition. And the Series X is also a perfectly capable console. That's all this comes down to. So, you know, there's a reason why Digital Foundry highlights these things. It's because people want to know. Even if it's the smallest difference in the world, they want to know what the differences are. And with a game like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, this is a difference we're seeing. And this is something we have noticed with the PS5, you know, quite often, where it may be a small advantage to most people, but it's still something that is worth noting. Again, I'm not going to make a dedicated video talking about how the Xbox has this major advantage here because I don't run an Xbox-centric channel. However, that does not mean that I have not highlighted these things in my videos, because I have. I have acknowledged the fact that Hitman has had its time where it had some advantages over the PS5. I've acknowledged the issues with the Division and possibly whatever other games there may have been. But there you go. You know, PlayStation 5 Performance still manages to impress. We are sitting here, you know, in March of 2021. These consoles have been out for months. So if there is going to be some type of significant difference with these titles or with future titles, we have yet to see that in both next-gen games and games that are getting, you know, like a remaster treatment like we're seeing with Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. I know that the end of this video is a little bit ranty, but, you know, there's not a whole lot going on now, and I'm trying to keep the content flowing for you guys, so I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, make sure you leave it a like, leave your thoughts down in the comments below, subscribe to the channel if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.